cell phones.
At all?
No, no. Young children particularly need to be careful, and particularly toddlers who now have cell phones that they use to play with. This is a really bad idea.
What led...
More fuel for the debate over whether your cell phone can give you brain cancer before Congress. What's your conclusion about cell phones and the risks they pose to your health?
Well, I can't be sure that cell phones cause brain cancer, but at this point, I cannot be sure that they're safe either. Well, if you hold a phone directly to your head, you're basically microwaving the head because that's the same signal strength. Unfortunately, you would never put your head in a microwave oven, of course not. But if you're holding it close to your head, you're getting a signal into the acoustic nerve, and we're seeing tumors exactly on the acoustic nerve.
Scientific evidence has overwhelmingly indicated that wireless devices do not pose a public health risk. What would be your answer to them?
They are correct at this time, but unfortunately what they're not saying is that almost all of the studies that have been published to date have studied people who've used phones for less than a decade. And unfortunately, when we start to see studies of longer-term use, we're starting to see an increased risk. And the question is, would you play Russian roulette with your children's brains? That the absorption into the head of the brain of a child is much greater. And you can see here, this blue line shows you here the absorption into an adult head.
Right.
And that you can see that it gets in a little bit, but this is into the head of a child, and you can see here it's much greater absorption into the head of a child. Now, nobody knows what this is going to mean for the long term. Forget about brain cancer. Let's just talk about learning problems and other issues of our children, and the fact that brains continue to grow and develop, and we know that the brain doesn't fully mature until the early 20s.
So if I can just show you a quick animation, I think we'll bring the science really clear. Most people think their cell phone just receive waves, but they don't. The cell phone has to send a wave out in order to find a cell tower near you. That is an important clue for us about simple things we might be able to do to prevent any changes if, in fact, any are occurring. And notice again, the waves go into your brain. They have to. That's how the device works.
And also an FDA statement. So far, studies have not shown any bad effects for anyone from cell phone RF. So the bottom line on the studies so far?
Well, until recently, I think those were pretty good encapsulations of what was found, which is that over the periods of time examined, 3 to 5 years of cell phone use, you weren't finding differences. But there have been some recent studies that have been alarming, where you follow people for longer periods of time. And Diane, remember that if you're going to look at something very subtle like radio frequency waves affecting brain cells, you have to study them over a decade.